It's late, your thoughts are awake. Settle in close, insomniacs. I've been watching how people move through early January for years now, and there's a particular choreography that reveals itself in the way bodies occupy space during this season. Some people arrive at the new year with a kind of mechanical brightness, shoulders back, declarations ready, lists made. There's a performance quality to it, a rehearsed enthusiasm that suggests they're enacting a script rather than responding to something genuine. But then there are others. You might be one of them. Your body knows something different about January 1st. Maybe you open the Notes app, start typing resolutions, then pause, feel the familiar weight settling in your chest, the tiredness of having been here before, the quiet awareness that these promises don't match the actual texture of how change has ever happened for you. Or maybe you stopped making resolutions years ago. Not dramatically, not with announcement, just stopped and carried a small uncertainty about whether that choice was wisdom or avoidance, whether you were listening to something true or just afraid. If you recognize yourself in this, in the hesitation, in the refusal, in the body that quietly resists what the calendar demands, this is for you. Tonight, let's examine why you don't make New Year's resolutions and why that might be the most honest response you could have. There's a quality to early January that's different from ordinary time. You can feel it in how people talk, the edge of expectation in conversations, the way everyone's checking in about goals and plans and who they're becoming this year. The collective energy has a pressured brightness to it, like a room where everyone's agreed to be optimistic without quite believing it. And if you're someone whose body doesn't naturally align with that rhythm, you start to feel it as a kind of discord, not loudly, just a persistent sense of being slightly out of step, of watching others perform enthusiasm for transformation while you're just tired. I've observed how this tiredness manifests. It's in the way you scroll through other people's resolution posts with a feeling that's hard to name. Not quite envy, not quite judgment, something closer to alienation, like you're watching a ritual you can't quite access, and that inability to access it says something shameful about who you are. You might open your own Notes app, start typing, "This year, I will," and then your fingers pause. Because even as you're forming the words, there's a voice underneath, quiet but persistent, that says, "But will you though? Haven't we done this before?" And that voice carries a history, all the other Januaries, all the promises made and quietly broken, all the times you tried to force yourself into a shape that didn't fit and then blamed yourself when the forcing didn't work. This is the private archaeology of repeated becoming, the accumulated weight of attempts that collapsed. And underneath it all, a belief you don't say out loud, that other people can change, but you can't. That there's something fundamentally broken in your capacity for transformation. Here's something worth examining, the story we've all been told about how change is supposed to work. New Year equals new you. Midnight on December 31st is a kind of reset button. The calendar flips, and somehow you're supposed to flip with it. Old patterns shed, new identity assumed, transformation aligned with a date. This is cultural mythology, not natural law, but we've inherited it so completely that it feels like truth. January arrives with this imposed urgency, this collective agreement that now is the time for becoming, and if you're not participating in that becoming, if you're not declaring goals and setting intentions and proving your commitment to growth, then something must be wrong with you. I've watched how this plays out in bodies. The way people hold themselves in early January, there's a rigidity to it sometimes, a kind of bracing, like they're preparing for a test they're not sure they'll pass. And what nobody acknowledges is this: your nervous system doesn't recognize the calendar. Your body doesn't know it's January 1st. The deep, ingrained patterns of who you are, the identity that's been forming over decades, doesn't reboot just because a year has turned. Time pretends to be generous for about 24 hours. We all agree to act as if something fundamental has shifted, as if the arbitrary division between December 31st and January 1st actually creates space for transformation. And then January 2nd arrives, and you're still you. Same patterns, same habits, same person you were on December 31st, except now there's this added pressure to be different, to prove through your behavior that the calendar's promise was real. The urgency is imposed, not organic. We've collectively decided that January is when change should happen, and so we all perform the ritual of resolution making, even when nothing inside us has actually shifted enough to support it. Let me describe what I've observed about how change actually works in humans, as opposed to how we're told it should work. People don't act according to goals, they act according to who they believe they are. This is the part that gets missed in all the resolution making. Your behavior flows from your self-concept, from the deep, mostly unconscious story you tell yourself about what kind of person you are. And that story has remarkable inertia. It protects itself. It defaults back to familiar patterns because those patterns feel like home, even when home is uncomfortable. I've watched this happen countless times. Someone declares they'll wake up early and exercise. The alarm goes off, and in that moment, between sleeping and waking, there's a choice point. But it's not really a choice between exercising or not exercising. It's a choice between being the kind of person who exercises or being the kind of person you currently recognize yourself as being. And if those two identities don't align, if there's no emotional infrastructure connecting who you are now with who you're trying to become, the gap feels impossible to cross. So you hit snooze, not because you lack discipline, but because the behavior you're demanding doesn't match the self you actually inhabit. Resolutions fail because they're promises made to a future version of you that feels abstract, almost fictional. You're asking your current self to betray its own patterns in favor of someone you haven't actually become yet. You're trying to wear clothes that are 3 sizes too small and wondering why they don't fit. The problem isn't the clothes. The problem is the mismatch between what you're trying to wear and the body you actually have. When I say identity resists, I don't mean it maliciously. I mean it protectively. Your sense of self has been built over years, through experience, through reinforcement, through the repeated evidence of who you've been. And when you suddenly demand that it shift on command, based on nothing but a date and a declaration, it doesn't comply. It holds its ground. Because shifting without foundation feels dangerous to the system that keeps you recognizable to yourself. There's another layer to this that's worth examining. The way we experience our future selves. I've noticed how people talk about their goals. The language is confident, declarative. But watch their faces when they say it. There's often a quality of distance there, like they're describing a character in a story they're writing, not a continuation of who they actually are. This is temporal self-disconnect. The you making the resolution, and the you who will have to live it, exist in different psychological spaces. The future you, the one who will wake up at 6 a.m. in the cold and dark and actually go to the gym, feels like a stranger. Someone you have hopes for, but don't quite know. So when February arrives and the alarm goes off and you're tired and it's cold and the bed is warm, the promise you made dissolves. Not because you're weak, but because the person who made that promise never felt emotionally connected to the person being asked to keep it. You didn't fail. You just stopped believing in someone you never quite recognized as yourself. Now let me tell you what I think is actually happening when you resist making resolutions. What's operating beneath the surface of what looks like avoidance or laziness or lack of motivation. Your nervous system has a memory. Every time you've set a goal and failed, every time you've promised transformation and then quietly abandoned it, your body learned something. It learned that hope followed by disappointment hurts. It learned that declarations of change can't always be trusted. It learned that sometimes the safest thing to do is not hope too much, because hoping and failing feels worse than never hoping at all. I've observed this protective mechanism in the way people's bodies respond to the pressure of January. There's a subtle bracing that happens, a kind of preemptive withdrawal, like they're already preparing for the disappointment they know is coming. This isn't self-sabotage. This is learned self-protection. Your nervous system is being loyal to the version of you that survived by keeping expectations manageable, that endured by not investing too much in transformation promises that kept dissolving. So when you make a resolution, or even when you think about making one, and you feel that resistance rise up, that's not evidence of moral failure. That's your body trying to spare you the pain of another cycle, the weight of another broken promise to yourself. Your resistance carries wisdom. It's saying, this pattern of forcing change through declaration and willpower hasn't served us. Maybe we need a different approach. Or maybe we need to stop approaching it altogether and let change happen in its own way, at its own pace. There's something else I've noticed about New Year's resolutions that makes them particularly fragile. The act of declaring them. When you announce your goals, whether publicly or just to yourself in a moment of conviction, you're putting your identity on display. You're saying, this is who I'm becoming, before you've actually integrated that becoming into your sense of self. And there's a specific quality to being witnessed too early in a process. It creates a kind of premature solidification. You become accountable to a narrative that might not actually fit. You lock yourself into a performance of change before change has had time to happen organically, privately, in the messy, non-linear way that real transformation actually unfolds. I've watched how this plays out. Someone announces they're going to run a marathon, and then every time you see them, there's an implicit question in the air. Are you training? Even if no one asks it out loud, they feel it. The gap between who they said they'd be and who they're actually being creates a shame that makes continuing harder, not easier. Identity needs privacy to form. The privacy to evolve without having to prove at every step that evolution is happening. It needs space to experiment, to fail, to adjust without the weight of expectation. Some changes die when spoken too soon. Some becoming needs silence, not announcement. This is why public resolutions often feel heavier than private change. You're not just trying to transform, you're trying to demonstrate transformation. And demonstration requires energy that could be going toward the actual work of becoming. Here's what I think happened, and I want you to really sit with this. You already knew. Maybe not in these exact words, but you knew. You knew that resolutions didn't work for you, that the whole ritual, the declaring, the tracking, the public accountability, felt wrong in a way you couldn't quite articulate but could absolutely feel. I've observed this knowing in people who've stopped making resolutions, in people who've stopped forcing it. There's a quality to how they move through early January, not with the mechanical brightness of those performing transformation, but with a quieter certainty, an organic unfolding. Small shifts that accumulate over time, adjustments that happen so gradually they don't notice them until they look back and realize they're not the same person they were a year ago. Perhaps you are one of these people. Maybe people questioned you. Maybe they asked why you weren't setting goals, why you seemed unmotivated, why you'd given up on growth. And maybe you didn't have the words to defend your choice, so you stayed quiet and carried this small doubt, this whisper that maybe they were right, that you really were unable to change, stuck, fundamentally resistant to becoming. But here's what I want you to understand. They were wrong. You were trusting your own experience over the collective script. You were honoring a truth that your nervous system already knew, that some wisdom lives in the refusal to participate in rituals that hurt more than they help. Your intuition was correct. You weren't avoiding growth. You were protecting your relationship with it. You intuitively understood that change is already always happening in you, every single day, in ways you won't always notice, in ways that don't announce themselves, in ways that honor the actual pace of human transformation, rather than the artificial urgency of cultural ritual. You just knew. So tonight, as January stretches out ahead and the world demands transformation, I want you to sit with something. You were right. All along, you were right. To question the ritual, to trust your resistance, to honor your own pace. Your intuition knew what your mind is only now finding words for. That becoming doesn't follow calendars, that transformation can't be forced, that the deepest changes happen in privacy and patience, not in declarations and deadlines. So let them make their resolutions. Let the world perform its annual ritual of transformation. Let January demand proof of becoming. You don't have to participate, you never did. You're already changing, every single day, in ways that honor the actual architecture of how humans grow, slowly, organically, with setbacks and returns, with patience and privacy, with a pace that can't be hurried by a calendar or a declaration or the collective pressure to become someone new just because the year has turned. And that becoming, that quiet, unwitnessed, sovereign becoming, is the truest kind there is. Drift off or dive deeper. I'll still be here in the quiet hours, Insomniacs,